if you read the standard clinical literature on borderline personality disorder, it's, well, it reads like a life sentence.
Yeah, it really does.
It's just total despair,
Yeah.
like a permanent suffocating storm cloud that's just never going to lift.
Mm.
But, what if the hard medical data actually proves that that storm has a built-in expiration date?
Right.
And, well, even more provocatively, what if the absolute chaos of the disorder is actually the engine for the highest forms of human creativity and, like, intense living?
It's a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Because historically, personality disorders, and especially BPD, they were viewed by both the public and the medical establishment as fundamentally untreatable.
Right, like a character flaw almost.
Exactly. They were considered these structural flaws in the personality itself, just baked in.
Yeah.
But the source material we're examining today, which is a really detailed breakdown by Professor Sam Vaknin, titled Borderline as Life is Worth Living, Technicolor Adventure.
Great title, by the way.
It's so good. But it takes all of that conventional wisdom and just completely upends it.
It really does. And so for our deep dive today, we are basically stripping away the stigma and looking at the actual mechanics of the borderline mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because whether you are navigating this yourself or maybe you're supporting someone who is, or honestly, even if you're just fascinated by the extremes of human psychology, the reality of BPD is nothing like the pop culture caricature.
No, not at all.
Vaknin is arguing that we need to stop looking at these traits purely as a curse, this dark storm cloud.
Right.
And we need to look at the meteorological data to stick with the analogy showing that the storm actually passes. And then we could look at the incredibly vivid rainbow that exists inside of it.
I love that analogy because to do that, to really understand it, we have to start with what is probably the starkest contradiction in the whole mental health landscape.
Okay.
And that's the gap between how BPD actually feels to the person and what the medical prognosis actually is.
Right. Because it feels awful.
Oh, unbearable. Vaknin addresses the fact that the internal experience of the patient is often dominated by profound suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
There's this unbearable emptiness, a complete dysregulation of emotions, and this deep-seated conviction that they are just broken beyond repair.
Wait, okay, so let's unpack this right away.
Yeah.
Because if the internal experience is that bleak, how does he reconcile that with his claim that the prognosis is incredibly good?
Yeah.
Because he states, point blank, that the outcome for BPD is significantly better than narcissistic personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and certainly schizophrenia.
It is.
But if I have BPD, I am not feeling hopeful right now, right? I'm feeling like I'm drowning.
Right.
So where is the disconnect between these rosy statistics and the actual lived agony of the patient?
The disconnect is entirely in the time frame.
The time frame.
Yeah, and how we view the trajectory of mental illness over an entire lifespan.
Yep.
Vaknin points to a staggering statistical reality. More than 80% of people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder lose the diagnosis by the time they reach 45 or 50 years old.
80%.
80%.
Just age out of the diagnosis.
Yes. He literally describes this remission as marvelous, spontaneous, inevitable, and inexorable.
That is wild. That feels counterintuitive, though.
Yeah.
If it's a structural personality disorder, how does just getting older cure it?
Well, think about the physiological toll.
Okay.
The best way to visualize it is, think of the BPD brain as a high-performance sports car.
Great.
But it's been driven in first gear at 8,000 RPMs for like 2 decades.
Oh, wow. So it's just screaming.
Exactly. The emotional engine is constantly redlining. Every interaction, every perceived slight, every wave of anxiety is processed at maximum voltage.
Right.
So by the time a person reaches midlife, the biological and psychological systems, they just simply cannot sustain that level of output anymore.
They burn out.
They burn out the symptoms. The endocrine system, the nervous system, they physically adapt. The emotional reactivity naturally dampens because the actual physiological capacity for that intense volatility just diminishes with age.
Oh, I see. So it's an eventual biological exhaustion of the symptoms.
Exactly.
But, that still leaves a terrifying gap.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you are diagnosed at 20, telling someone, hey, don't worry, your brain will physically exhaust its capacity to produce this pain in 25 years.
Right.
That is not a comforting treatment plan.
No, not at all.
How are people supposed to survive the decades before that spontaneous remission?
Well, the good news is they don't have to just sit around and wait for the clock to run out.
Okay.
Vaknin emphasizes that we have incredibly effective active interventions right now, specifically dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, and schema therapy.
Right. DBT is huge.
It's massive. And the numbers he provides for DBT are just profound. Over 50% of people with a BPD diagnosis who attend DBT are functionally healed within 1 year.
Quite functionally healed.
Meaning they no longer meet the diagnostic criteria for the disorder within a single year.
Okay, I want to dig into the how of that, because traditional talk therapy,
Right.
Sitting on a couch and having a psychiatrist ask, well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, the classical approach.
Right. That often fails spectacularly with BPD.
It does. It really does.
So why is DBT the magic bullet here?
So traditional psychoanalysis tries to find the root cause of a feeling, right?
Right.
But that can actually trap a borderline patient in a spiral of just endlessly analyzing their own chaotic emotions. It feeds the loop.
Oh, I see. Like staring into a funhouse mirror.
Exactly. So DBT, which was originally developed by Marsha Linehan, completely bypasses that. It doesn't care why you're upset in the moment. It is highly, highly practical.
Okay.
It teaches a concrete toolkit for distress tolerance and emotional regulation. It literally trains the patient to intercept the physical sensation of panic or abandonment before it dictates their behavior.
Can you give me an example? Like, what does that interception look like in practice?
Yeah, so let's say a patient texts their partner, and the partner doesn't reply for 3 hours.
Very common scenario.
Right. In the BPD brain, that triggers a catastrophic fear of abandonment. The physical body goes straight into fight or flight.
Heart racing, panicking.
Yes. Now, traditional therapy might try to unpack why they fear abandonment based on, say, a childhood trauma.
Which takes years.
Exactly. DBT instead teaches them a physical skill, like literally holding an ice cube.
Yeah.
Or dunking their face in a bowl of ice water.
Wait, really? Ice water?
Yeah. It triggers what's called the mammalian dive reflex. It physically forces the heart rate to slow down.
Oh, wow. So it's a hardware override.
Exactly. It's a hardware override. It teaches them to logically observe the emotion without acting on it, so it rewires the behavioral response to the trigger.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
And so where does schema therapy fit into this? Does it work alongside DBT?
It does. So if DBT is the immediate breaks, schema therapy tackles the deeply ingrained psychological patterns, which are called schemas, that form in childhood.
Okay.
So if a person has a schema that they are inherently unlovable, literally every interaction they have is filtered through that lens.
Right.
Schema therapy helps the patient identify that faulty lens and actively replace it over time.
So DBT is the emergency brake, and schema is like rebuilding the engine over the long haul.
That's a perfect way to put it. Combined, it provides both the immediate behavioral survival tools and the long-term cognitive rebuilding. Vaknin actually goes so far as to call DBT the most efficacious treatment modality anywhere in mental health.
Anywhere in mental health.
Yeah.
That is a huge statement. But I guess it brings us back to the core tension we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We have this highly effective therapy, and we have an 80% natural remission rate.
Uh-huh.
The destination is secure. But the journey to get there requires an immense, grueling amount of scaffolding. I mean, Vaknin's surviving requires talk therapy, medication, social support, and above all, infinite patience.
Infinite patience. And that is a really heavy prescription when you are living in a constant state of what feels like emotional third-degree burns.
Yeah.
To understand how someone actually survives that waiting period, we have to look past the clinical pathology. We have to look at how the BPD mind actually operates day to day.
The subjective experience.
Exactly. And Vaknin introduces this framework to explain it, arguing that the borderline experience isn't just a curse, it is also a really rich endowment.
And this is where we get to the C.I.E. framework.
Yes.
Creativity, intensity, and enlightenment.
Right.
And this is where we really shift from looking at the disease to looking at the profound human experience underneath it. Let's start with C for creativity.
Okay.
How does the chaos of a borderline mind translate into the highest forms of human expression?
Well, Vaknin connects the disorganization of borderline traits to a concept developed by the psychologist Hans Eysenck. And Eysenck called it psychoticism.
Okay, psychoticism. That sounds intense. Does that mean like psychosis?
No, and that's an important distinction. Psychoticism in Eysenck's model does not mean psychosis or having hallucinations.
Oh, good. Okay.
It refers to a personality dimension that's characterized by nonconformity, tough-mindedness, and crucially, a lack of rigid cognitive organization.
Meaning what, exactly?
It means the brain's associative borders are highly permeable.
So they don't categorize things the way a neurotypical brain does.
Precisely. A neurotypical brain uses cognitive inhibition to filter out irrelevant information.
Right.
If I say the word chair, your brain immediately filters out everything that isn't a four-legged object you sit on. You don't think about trees or the concept of fabric or the existential philosophy of resting. You just think chair.
Sure.
The BPD brain, which is high in psychoticism, lacks that strict inhibition. They associate chair with 1,000 disparate concepts simultaneously.
Oh, wow. And Vaknin points out that this specific lack of boundaries is the first cousin of creativity. I was trying to visualize this earlier, and I kind of came up with an analogy.
Oh, let's hear it.
Think of a rigidly organized, neurotypical mind like a coloring book.
Okay.
You know exactly what the picture's supposed to be. It's a house or it's a dog.
Mm-hmm.
And the cognitive goal is simply to stay safely inside the thick black lines.
Right.
It's utterly readable. It is highly functional for getting through the day. But the BPD mind, lacking that cognitive inhibition, is like a completely blank canvas. And they've just been handed a massive bucket of paint.
I really like that. Because, yeah, the bucket of paint is going to be messier.
Yeah.
It might get all over the floor. It might ruin your shirt. But it is the absolute prerequisite for producing something entirely unprecedented.
Right, you can't be original in a coloring book.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot paint an original masterpiece if your brain is restricted to a paint-by-numbers grid. Because the borderline mind isn't bound by conventional structures, they can connect ideas that others literally, physically cannot see.
And Vaknin highlights just how vital that act of creation is for survival, right?
It does.
Because when you're suffering from that profound internal emptiness we discussed earlier, generating new things, whether that's writing or art or building a business, it provides a tether to the world.
Yes.
It gives them a profound reason to believe life is actually worth living. So it's almost like a survival mechanism that just happens to produce brilliant innovation.
That's spot on. But, and here's the catch, that lack of internal borders, that blank canvas, it doesn't just turn off when they step away from their art or their work.
Right.
If you have no emotional borders, how do you experience a simple conversation? How do you process a slight change in a friend's tone of voice?
You absorb all of it.
Exactly. That lack of boundaries creates a profound, almost overwhelming sensitivity to the world. Which brings us to the second pillar of Vaknin's framework.
For intensity.
Yes, intensity.
And this is where Vaknin makes what I think is his most brutal comparison. He contrasts the borderline experience with the experience of neurotypical, quote-unquote, healthy people.
Yeah.
And he describes the lives of healthy people as drab, boring, and black and white.
Wow.
Right? While the life of the borderline is a Technicolor movie.
To understand that Technicolor movie, we have to redefine a clinical term that gets, honestly, weaponized a lot. And that term is dysregulation.
You hear that a lot.
Usually when a psychiatrist says a patient is dysregulated, it's used as an insult.
Right.
It means they are out of control, their emotions are wildly disproportionate to the stimuli, and basically they need to be medicated back down to a flat nose line.
It's treated purely as a malfunction, like the emotional thermostat is broken.
Exactly. But Vaknin argues we are looking at it completely backward. This dysregulation is actually evidence of a profound, intimate relationship with life itself.
Really?
Yes. The borderline person isn't just skimming the surface of existence the way many of us do on our daily commutes or running errands. They are tasting, smelling, digesting, and getting completely immersed in every single ingredient of life.
He actually calls it a voluptuous contact with life.
Voluptuous, yes.
Which is such a vivid phrase. They are intricately acquainted with their own internal processes because they are constantly flooded by them.
Right.
He describes the borderline as almost like a throwback to a previous age of romantics and idealists, embodying the pure force of life, which he calls libidinal aesthetics.
Libidinal aesthetics. It's a dense term, I know.
Yeah, unpack that for us.
It essentially refers to the raw, life-affirming energy of creation and desire, but manifesting in a visible, poetic way.
Okay.
They don't just exist in a space. They consume it. They illuminate it. When they feel love, they feel it with a terrifying depth.
Right.
And when they feel grief, they feel it with an absolute, unadulterated purity.
So I have to challenge this framing just a little bit.
Go for it.
Because libidinal aesthetics and Technicolor movies, I mean, that sounds incredible on paper, very romantic.
Sure.
But Vaknin also admits there is a catastrophic price to pay for this intensity.
There is.
So how do we balance admiring this, voluptuous immersion in life without completely romanticizing the sheer exhaustion of it.
It's a fine line.
Right, because if your nervous system treats a minor disagreement with a friend as a life or death abandonment scenario,
Yeah.
that isn't poetic.
Yeah.
That is physiological torture.
It is torture, and Wagner doesn't shy away from that at all. The pain is the toll they pay for the depth.
Yeah.
The borderline is overwhelmed, yes. But because they are overwhelmed, they achieve a strata of human experience that is entirely inaccessible to the rest of us.
I see.
He points out that many healthy people who are trapped in their cubicles, numbed by routines and algorithms and daily commutes, they would gladly trade their drab, stable existence for just a taste of that absolute, terrifying immersion in life.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, stability is safe, but it is deeply dull sometimes.
Exactly.
Modern life has basically anesthetized us,
Mm-hmm.
and the borderline is the one person in the room walking around without any anesthesia.
That is exactly the dynamic.
Yeah.
And an energy like that, a person walking around without emotional skin, radiating that level of Technicolor intensity, it cannot be contained internally.
It spills over.
It inevitably spills over onto everyone who comes into contact with them.
Which carries us directly into the final letter of Wagner's framework.
Yes, E.
E for enlightenment.
Yeah.
And to explain how a borderline person enlightens others, we really have to look closely at the concept of emptiness.
Right.
Because usually the chronic feeling of emptiness in BPD is viewed as a terrifying void, like a literal lack of a core self.
Which is how it feels to the person experiencing it.
Right.
But Wagner suggests we view that emptiness not as a void, but as a feature.
A feature.
Yeah, it makes them a receptacle. Because they lack a rigid defensive ego, what he beautifully calls being vapor, not flesh, they are completely open to amalgamate and aggregate the traits of the people around them.
Okay, this is where the psychology gets so fascinating.
It really does.
Because they are this open, empty receptacle, they serve as a blank canvas for everyone else. Wagner compares them to a Rorschach test, or a litmus test for the people in their lives.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario so people can picture it.
Yeah, please.
Imagine a non-BPD person, let's just call him the partner, starts dating someone with BPD.
Right.
Because the borderline person is highly empathetic and lacks that rigid core identity, they act as vapor.
Right.
They intuitively absorb the partner's speech patterns, their esoteric hobbies, their deepest unspoken desires. To the partner, this initially feels like magic.
Oh, I bet.
It feels like they have finally, against all odds, met their ultimate soulmate. Someone who understands them completely without them even having to speak.
But really, they are actually just falling in love with a perfectly polished mirror of themselves.
Exactly. They are seeing themselves reflected back at them. And a perfect mirror doesn't just reflect your charming traits forever.
Uh-oh.
Right. Eventually, the borderline partner, still acting as that litmus test, begins to reflect the partner's hidden flaws, their insecurities, their hypocrisies. The borderline person resonates and merges so deeply that they act as a catalyst. They pull out the absolute core identity of the people they interact with, for better or for worse.
And Wagner warns it is very often for the worse, at least in the short term.
Yes, very often.
He describes sharing a relationship with the borderline as an onerous, extremely high-maintenance experience. He says they can literally break you apart. The psychological cost can be catastrophic.
The alchemical fire they bring to a relationship burns away all the pleasant fictions people tell themselves.
Wow.
But Wagner's central argument here is that there is profound value in that fire.
Because it exposes the truth.
Exactly. By breaking you apart, they force you to confront who you actually are. He argues there is learning in loss, there is growth in pain, and there is personal evolution in hurt. They drive everyone around them to unusual feats of self-reflection and introspection.
That actually brings up a massive question about human nature for me.
What's that?
Well, if these relationships are this volatile, if the borderline mind is this sensitive and this destructive to the status quo, why did it evolve?
The evolutionary psychology angle.
Right. I mean, from a purely evolutionary standpoint, a trait this painful and this widespread, it can't just be a glitch in the matrix.
No.
Why would human evolution select for a mind whose primary function seems to be acting as a painful, beautiful catalyst for other people?
Wagner tackles this directly. He states that borderlines must have a vital place in the human architecture, or, exactly as you said, evolution would have bred the trait out millennia ago.
It's too common to be an accident.
Right. In clinical terms, BPD sits in what's called the dramatic or erratic cluster of personality disorders. And they are called dramatic because in their presence, the status quo shatters.
They force action.
They do. Think about early human tribal dynamics for a second.
Okay.
A tribe built solely on rigid routine and, polite harmony, it might survive for a while, but it inevitably becomes stagnant.
Sure.
It ignores underlying tensions. The borderline individual who is hypervigilant to microexpressions, who feels every unspoken resentment, and is completely unafraid to shatter the social decorum.
Because they lack the cognitive inhibition.
Exactly. They act as the tribe's truth teller. They expose the hidden dynamics. They catalyze processes. They force the group to address its hidden fractures, to adapt, and ultimately to evolve.
Wow.
They catalyze growth and wisdom in the human species as a whole.
So they are essentially the evolutionary spark plug.
Yeah.
They make the human world move.
They shake us out of our drab, black and white complacency. They are not merely bad or mad or sad, as Vacton eloquently puts it.
Yeah.
He calls them creatures of light.
Creatures of light. I mean, we have come an incredibly long way from the beginning of this deep dive.
We really have.
Let's trace the arc of what we've unpacked here, because it fundamentally rewrites the narrative on mental health entirely.
It does. The traditional medical model looks at the symptoms of BPD and sees only broken machinery.
Right. A life sentence of despair.
Yeah.
But the data tells us the machinery heals itself.
Yes.
Over 80% of individuals reach spontaneous remission by midlife, as that biological engine finally downshifts from the high RPMs.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who are waiting for that remission, DBT offers a highly effective manual for overriding the panic reflexes, with a 50% success rate in a single year.
Which is incredible.
So the destination is actually statistically filled with hope.
And the journey, while agonizing, is not devoid of meaning. That is the true power of the C.I.E. framework.
Exactly. We reframed the psychological chaos as creativity, the cognitive disinhibition that provides a blank canvas for unprecedented art and thought. We reframed the torturous emotional dysregulation as intensity, a voluptuous libidinal immersion in a Technicolor life.
Right.
And we reframed that terrifying internal emptiness as enlightenment, an evolutionary feature that allows them to act as a perfectly polished mirror, catalyzing growth and deep introspection in literally everyone they touch.
It completely forces us to reconsider the utility of psychological pain.
It really does.
It strips away those pejorative labels and demands that we recognize the immense raw value in operating at the extreme ends of the human emotional spectrum.
It proves the title of the source material. A borderline karat is undeniably a rich endowment and absolutely a life worth living.
With the knowledge that the volatility does eventually subside.
Right. Which actually brings me to a thought I have not been able to shake since we started examining the data on that remission.
Oh, what is it?
We established that the borderline experience is this brilliant, chaotic Technicolor movie. They feel the world with a magnitude that neurotypical people can barely comprehend.
Absolutely.
And we know the hard biological data. We know that the engine redlining finally stops for 80% of individuals by the time they reach 45 or 50.
Right.
The spontaneous remission arrives. The storm finally breaks.
The emotional voltage drops to a manageable baseline.
So, what happens to that Technicolor when the storm disappears?
Oh.
When the remission arrives and the volatility fades into that drab, stable existence we talked about earlier, do they find peace in the black and white?
That's a haunting question.
Right. Or do they spend the second half of their lives quietly mourning the loss of the vibrant, painful, beautiful colors of their youth?
Wow. That is a profound tension to leave unresolved.
It is something to keep turning over in your mind.
Yeah.
Until next time.